Okay, good afternoon, friends. So, as you know, we are going to start with human geography, and I have already informed you about the significance of human geography. कितना percent है significance? 65% is the significance of human geography. And फर्स्ट टॉपिक अगर हम देखें सिलेबस में तो इट इज द पर्सपेक्टिव्स इन ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी. दिस इज द फर्स्ट सिलेबस ऑफ द टॉपिक. Ideally I should have started with this topic, ideally speaking. ठीक है, but you can understand ideals exist only on papers and books. Realistically, if I would have started, कल की क्लास आधी होती, because this topic is actually little bit philosophical, and not only little bit, it is quite philosophical. ठीक है, so the nature of the topic is such that कि अभी भी old students sometimes they call me at 3 a.m. in the morning and they request me कि सर वो perspective वाला lecture सुना दीजिए, नींद नहीं आ रहा. So the topic is something like that. So I decided it would be much better that we start with something which is quite easier and easier to grasp. So we are going to start with this topic, that is the population geography. Okay. In human geography, there is these two topics are given together, population and settlement. Although we can see that there is a very clear-cut division in the subtopics which are given. So here there are topics like growth and distribution of world population, demographic attributes, causes and consequences of migration, concepts of over and under population, population theories, world population problems and policies, social well-being and quality of life, population as social capital. So number of topics are given in the syllabus. Now population is very significant topic for especially for a country like India. ठीक है, you would have very frequently heard people saying that India is a poor country, है कि नहीं? But अभी तो second richest India का ही है, तो how you can say that? Whatever, but in general we can say that there are large number of poor people living in the country, very large number. Now, the thing about one of the reasons given for this poverty, it is essentially, it is said that we don't have that much of resources. Okay? So again, if we look into the population or resource population ratio, we can say that it is lower. Frequently, it is said that it is lower. However, when we'll study economic geography and we will study the concept of resources, we will say or we will see that resource is a very dynamic concept. In fact, one of the very famous economic geography professors, he commented on resources, Professor Zimmerman. He talked about resources and he said that resources are mind dependent. So if we can think of something as a resource, we can also develop the technology for it to become a resource. Ultimately, we can develop the resources. Okay? For example, today, what is the use of water? Variety of uses are there of water. Okay? But can we say at present, water is essentially not used mainly as a source of energy? Can we say we have already developed actually the technology to utilize it as energy resource, although it is very costly. In future, if there are further technological breakthroughs, can we say this cost can go down? Like for example, you would have read about the solar panels or the solar energy. So now the grid cost of the solar energy is actually equal to or even lower than the conventional energy resources. And if you go few decades back, no one would have thought that it was possible. But essentially it has become possible. Okay? Now the question arises, when we are saying that resources are mind dependent, tell me whose mind? Kiska mind? Obviously human mind, that is very sure. And can we say humans, if you talk about, they are essentially the population, human resource. Although we will see that there is a difference between population and human resource. Population which is healthy and skilled, that is essentially called as human resource. ठीक है? So can we say कि ये बात बिल्कुल गलत है कि India doesn't has the resources? Can we say at the top of the hierarchy of resources is the human beings, and we have ample supply of human beings? कुछ दिनों में अभी हम चाइना को पीछे छोड़ने वाले हैं, हरा देंगे फाइनली एक फील्ड में. We would have already done that, but China also took the competition. They relaxed their population policy. So थोड़ा सा time और लग जाएगा, but we'll do that. So ultimately, that is the significance of this topic of population. So what is the distribution of population? What has been the growth of population? And population is the ultimate determinative factor. Take another example. We will see later on that Europe, you all have read about Europe. Now tell me, can we say in recent times, European population has been shrinking? Population growth in many of the countries of Europe, it is in fact negative. There is negative population growth going on. ठीक है? And बाद में देखेंगे when we'll talk about the population policies and etc. things, we will see that actually Europe was able to complete the demographic transition in between the first and the second world war itself. And since then, what has happened? There has been decline, very clearly decline in the, or not decline, it was stagnant for some time, and now again it is beginning to decline. So tell me, can we say after Second World War, what has been the significance of Europe in the geopolitical arena? Can we say it has declined? Obviously, yes, it has declined. Europe, we will later see, the migration policy of Europe was very strict. It was more of a white race policy. And that is why there was less number of migrants who were going into Europe. Comparatively, American migration policy, it was more liberal. And as a result, we will see that the population growth of America, and I'm talking about United States of America, has been faster because of the migration. You can understand USA is referred to as the melting pot of the world. And can we say the same decline in the geopolitical arena hasn't been seen in case of United States of America? Obviously, yes. In recent times, which countries are the ones whose significance in the geopolitics has been increasing? China, India. Can we say that mostly those countries where the population is higher? Okay. So can you understand the significance of this topic? This is the topic which determines everything what we are studying. Although here in population geography, the primary focus is on the demography. Okay. So what is essentially demography? Demography is essentially study of the population numbers and all the related processes. Okay. So that is what we study in demography. So here in population geography, we are essentially concerned about these population numbers. Okay. I hope it is clear to you. Okay. And अब देखें तो कैन वी से दैट there are some objectives as a society, as humanity. Can we say that we have designed for the people or for the population? ठीक है, so there are some objectives, and what are essentially these objectives? Can we say these objectives would be related with a better quality of life? Yes or no? To provide a better quality of life, better living standard to all the people, or at least majority of the population, यही ऑब्जेक्टिव होगा. ठीक है, सो दिस इज वेयर वी हैव टू रीच. ठीक है, नाउ कैन वी से दैट देयर वुड बी सम पॉपुलेशन पैटर्न्स? यस और नो? इस पॉपुलेशन पैटर्न्स में बहुत सारी चीजें हम पैटर्न में बात कर सकते हैं. लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल, कैन वी से इन दिस पॉपुलेशन पैटर्न वी कैन थिंक ऑफ द टोटल पॉपुलेशन कितना है, और this total population in itself doesn't make much of sense. Can we say it would make sense if we look into the population density, for example, density in fact and distribution? That would make a better sense of how much population is living in a particular area. ठीक है, then again other factors like population growth, again that is also one of the population patterns which is present. ठीक है, so that is some of the population patterns. Now outcome of this density and growth, can we say will it be reflected in some other parameters? Like, tell me, if we just talk about this, can we say it would be reflected in some socio-economic parameters में दिखेगा? Like for example, tell me, can it be reflected in the poverty levels? Or others like, can it be reflected in the education levels of the people, like for example the literacy rate? Or can it be reflected in the health aspects of the people? So various kind of socio-economic indicators, they would be reflecting the relationship that exists between the population and the resources. ठीक है, so that is the case. Can we say sometimes these socio-economic parameters can be problematic? Can it be the problems? Yes or no? Population problems हो सकती हैं. Like India में अगर हम देखें तो can we say that still the per capita income is low? Can we say that still if you talk about the health indicators are not up to the levels which are required? IMR is high, MMR is still high. So several such type of problems can be there. And tell me, so can we say that if we want, we have to also provide solutions to these problems, and these solutions would be solved by, can we say, population policy? And through the population policy, what is the objective? To achieve a better quality of life. ठीक है, so this is essentially what we are going to study in population geography. ठीक है, in population geography. So again अब इस framework से अगर हम syllabus को देखें तो can you see the objective जो मैंने last में लिखा है? Can you see it is written here? Social well-being and quality of life. So this is where we have to reach. This is the ultimate objective where we have to reach to provide a good or better social well-being and quality of life for majority of the population as much as possible. But for that to ultimately reach, first we'll have to understand what are the patterns. So can you see growth and distribution of world population? So that first part. Then can you see the demographic attributes? अब पेपर 1 के syllabus में demographic attributes is not mentioned in detail. We'll see that this demographic attributes is mentioned in paper 2. Syllabus में mention है. So what we will do when we will be preparing the demographic attributes, for each of the demographic attributes, what we will do, we will study from both world point of view and from India point of view, whether it is literacy rate, whether if you talk about the health indicators, or if you talk about the occupation rate, or variety of things, age, etc. All these things, attributes, we will be talking about. Okay. So another is the causes and consequences of migration. Migration is one of the elements, I'll talk about that, of population change which is taking place. Okay. Then there are some conceptual aspects which are given in our syllabus, two important concepts of over, under and optimum population, and there is population theories. Okay. So in fact what we will be doing, we will start with these. We'll be starting with the population theories and the concept of over, under and optimum population. Okay. And then we will move on to this growth, distribution and all those things. ये जो यहाँ पर मैंने framework बनाया है, because we need some perspectives to understand these patterns. ठीक है, इन patterns को समझने के लिए भी हमें कुछ perspectives चाहिए. ठीक है, so what we will do, first we'll study those theories and make those perspectives so that we can understand the patterns better. ठीक है, so that is what we are going to do, and then we'll move on to the demographic attributes. Once we have done with the demographic attributes, then we'll move on to the population problems, and then ultimately, or this is actually the population problems there, and the population solutions, that is the population policy, and finally we'll study about those topics of quality of life and standard of living, etc., etc. Okay, so that is the framework through which we will be moving. Now, as I have told you, human geography में क्या है, paper 1 and paper 2 should be studied together. ठीक है, because here the theories that we will learn, the frameworks that we will be learning here, those frameworks would be applied, हम उसको दो जगह पर टेस्ट करेंगे. ठीक है, one, we will test it from the world point of view, कि क्या वो theory applicable है, is that theory applicable from the world pattern point of view, or that then we will test whether it is also applicable at a country level, and that country would be essentially India. ठीक है, so this is the framework that we are going to follow. And if I just show you the same thing, the pattern here, so you can see there is the topic of cultural setting. अब इस cultural setting नाम इसको दिया हुआ है, but इसमें दो parts हैं. I have told you before. One is the cultural geography, which I will be dealing separately, and the second one is the demography of India. So अगर मैं demography of India में देखूं, तो same topics मुझे फिर से मिल जाते हैं. Can you see? There is presence of this growth, distribution and density of population, जो same चीज वहां पर देखा था हमने. ठीक है, can you see here demographic attributes? Now here the demographic attributes are mentioned in more detailed. ठीक है, the syllabus has been made here more exclusive. So sex ratio, age structure, literacy rate, workforce, dependency ratio, longevity, all these are mentioned there. Similarly, there is migration. अब यहाँ पर they are also talking about inter-regional, intra-regional and international migration and their associated problems. Also population problems and policies and health indicators. So this is again, can you see that almost there is overlapping of the topics from paper 1? Yes or no? ठीक है, so सब में देखेंगे कि कुछ ना कुछ concepts हैं, कुछ ना कुछ theories हैं, and उसी theories को use करके हमें क्या करना है, we have to solve those patterns. ठीक है, as a student जब मैं खुद preparation करता था, तो this topic was a menace for me. I had a fear with this topic. ठीक है, so much so because इस topic में वो you must have seen वो census का data इतना सारा डाटा दिखाई पड़ता है कि आई हैड ऑलवेज दिस फियर कि इसको कैसे याद करूंगा, कैसे याद करूंगा. इनफैक्ट फर्स्ट टू अटेम्प्ट्स went into this fear. Whenever I used to go to write mains, always I had this at the back of my mind कि यार वो तो मैंने याद ही नहीं किया है. ठीक है. By third attempt, ultimately I developed a method to simplify it. How I could be doing this in a better manner, even without lots of data, mugging up lots of data. ठीक है. So there will be some data which we'll have to learn, but that would not be I would say unmanageable. We'll just learn some data which is manageable. बस manageable data हमें देखना है. बाकी हम क्या करने वाले हैं, जो हम concepts learn करेंगे उस concepts को apply करेंगे और सब चीज़ों को simplify कर देंगे. ठीक है. And then you'll see कि end में मुझे क्या चाहिए होगा, ये जितने ये लिखे हुए हैं, sex ratio, age structure, literacy rate, workforce, dependency ratio, longevity, इन सब में लास्ट में मुझे क्या चाहिए होगा, एक मैप. ठीक है. और उस मैप में कैसे डिवीजन चाहिए होगा, हाई, मीडियम एंड लो. 3 कैटेगरीज में डिवाइड करेंगे, वर्ल्ड लेवल पर कंट्रीज को एंड स्टेट लेवल पर और इंडिया लेवल पर स्टेट्स को. दिस इज द लास्ट डाटा दैट आई विल नीड टू मग अप. एंड फाइनली वी विल सी, we'll make frameworks which will be much better than what is written in the books. ठीक है. much more meaningful, much more scientific that is written in the books. ठीक है. so this is basically how we are going to move about in this population geography. ठीक है. I hope it is clear. In the end part, we'll also deal with the cultural setting part, that is the cultural geography, where we will study about the cultural geography of India, historical perspective of Indian society, the racial, linguistic, ethnic diversities, religious minorities, major tribes, tribal areas and their problems, cultural regions. So all these we'll be dealing in the later part once we have done with this demography of India. ठीक है. और demography of India and world. ठीक है. So I hope the lecture pattern is clear how we'll be moving on. ठीक है. So this is what we are going to essentially do. ठीक है. फिर से मैं बताता हूं, जो बार बार मुझे लगता है कि अब मुझे ये रोज का ही एक रूल बना लेना चाहिए. तुम लोगों को सबसे पहले रिमाइंड करना, there might be occasions where you might not be able to understand few things here and there. Although यहाँ पर ऐसे occasions कम होंगे because population geography theories are simple. ठीक है. Despite that, अगर ऐसे occasions आते हैं, what is the thing which you have to do? You have to move on. You don't have to get stuck there. You have to read it, try to mug up. अगर mug up हो पा रहा है तो ठीक है, नहीं तो you just move on. With a period of time, you will be able to memorize it, and once you memorize it, the clarity would also come with respect to understanding. ठीक है. और ये चीज जो मैं तुम लोगों को बोलता था कि क्लास से ही सब कुछ आएगा, पेपर देखा. ठीक है. Was it not mostly from the class? Almost you could have done that. Physical geography की बात कर रहा हूं because you haven't studied human geography, so it was mostly from the class. ठीक है. जिसने भी उसको सही से रटा होगा, he would be able to score very good. ठीक है. एक दो बच्चे हैं, I really feel कि उनका रिजल्ट आने वाला है, and very hopeful I am that they'll be giving result. One of the girls who is just 21 years old, and probably I really feel कि उसका top 50 आएगा, because if you look into the way she writes, ठीक है, you'll be amazed. ठीक है. उसके डायग्राम्स वगैरह मैं शेयर करूंगा तुम लोगों को. You'll be really amazed the way she writes. Or I have talked to her yesterday itself, so she was saying that the exam has went very well. It was her first attempt, और she was from the class, the optional foundation class. You'll see, पक्का उसका रिजल्ट आएगा. ठीक है. Okay. So now if we talk about the population geography, सबसे पहले कुछ terms को समझ लेते हैं, and later I'll be talking about those terms in more detail. ठीक है. And if I talk about those details, those terms, एक जो सबसे crucial term हमें समझना है, जो मैं population theories बात करने जा रहा हूं, all those population theories are trying to determine those levels. ठीक है. So what are those concepts? These are the concepts of overpopulation, under population and the optimum population. Over, under and optimum population. ठीक है. So if we first talk about the concept of overpopulation. So what essentially is overpopulation? क्या पता चलता है नाम से? Can we say overpopulation is a situation when population growth far exceeds the resource growth? In these concepts, what we are actually looking into, can I say we are looking into this phenomena, that is the population resource relationship? Yes or no? So this population resource relationship can take three forms. It can be either overpopulation, it can be either underpopulation, or it can be optimum population. Okay. So what is overpopulation? Overpopulation is a situation where the population growth far exceeds the resource growth. Far exceeds the resource growth. So such a situation is referred to as the condition of overpopulation. Now tell me, if there is situation of overpopulation, will we find variety of manifestations of this overpopulation present in the society? How we will be able to know that there is overpopulation? Okay, can we say that there would be presence of poverty? Poverty, can we say like unemployment, other things like malnutrition, famines, etc. Can we say such type of things would make the headlines more frequently? Yes or no? Such scenarios would be making the headlines more frequently. ठीक है. So such a scenario is referred to as overpopulation. ठीक है. बट अब एक प्रॉब्लम आ रही है, एंड ये प्रॉब्लम ये है कि इफ वी लुक इनटू मेनी एरियाज ऑफ द वर्ल्ड, लाइक मेनी कंट्रीज ऑफ अफ्रीका, सब सहारन अफ्रीका, वहां पर जाएं तो वहां पर भी यही सिचुएशन मिलती है. ठीक है. लेकिन वहां पे तो बहुत सारे लोग भी नहीं है. देयर आर नॉट सो मेनी पीपल. Population density in those countries is what? It is quite low. But they still have these characteristics. Okay. So when I have to identify that an area has overpopulation, tell me, can I say the first criteria should be population density? Overpopulation would exist in those areas where population density would be what? It would be high. Okay. So one more important manifestation would be the case of high population density. High population density. So अगर high population density है, then we can say that this area is basically what? This area is overpopulated, and also these manifestations are also found. Society is facing the problems of poverty, unemployment, famines, malnutrition, ठीक है, food insecurity, such type of situations are present. So that is the condition of overpopulation. Can we say no country would want to be in this condition of overpopulation? Yes or no? No country would want to be in this condition, but we'll see that there are many countries who are present in this overpopulation scenario. Then comes the underpopulation. ठीक है. And if you talk about underpopulation, इसको क्या कह सकते हैं? अंडर पॉपुलेशन क्या होगा? देखो, सिंपल टर्म्स में हम अंडर पॉपुलेशन को बोल सकते हैं कि इट इज अ सिचुएशन वेयर with addition of more population would not lead to decline in the standards of living. Okay? That means with the given resources, more people can be added and still the standards of living wouldn't decline. So such condition is referred to as the scenario of underpopulation. यानी कि वहां पर resources ज़्यादा हैं and population is less. The population is not enough to exploit the resources. That means if more people come, they would be better able to exploit the resources. And as a result, what will happen? There can be a situation where overall standard of living of all the people can actually increase. Okay? So what is the scenario of underpopulation? It is a situation where with increase in population, there is no decline in standards of living. The standards of living are not declining. So such a situation is referred to as the scenario of underpopulation. अब मैं अगर अपना दिमाग लगा के थोड़ा सोचूं, टेल मी, कैन वी से कि ये अंडर पॉपुलेशन के सिनारियो, अगर मैं वर्ल्ड में थोड़ा सा अपना ज्योग्राफी घुमाऊं, तो कैन वी से कि हमें तो ये दो तरह के सिनारियोज मिलते हैं अंडर पॉपुलेशन के? यस और नो? कैन वी से द आर्कटिक is one area where we find such kind of scenario? More people can go in and the standard of livings wouldn't decline, it can in fact improve. More resources can be exploited. But can we say that there are other areas, like for example in the tropics, many countries of the tropics, you'll be finding that such kind of underpopulation scenario would exist. Whether you talk about the savanna, whether you talk about the deserts, several such areas where you will be finding that such condition would be existing. So underpopulation दो तरीके से हो सकता है. We find that one is the Arctic type underpopulation scenario can exist. ठीक है? And if you talk about the other one, we call it as the Brazilian type. ठीक है, इसको मैं बाद में बहुत डिटेल में करवाऊंगा. We'll talk about the Ekman classification and there we'll talk about all these various types. But just we are trying to know these three terms because these are what we are going to study in the population theories. ठीक है? So there can be two types. Very clearly, this is part of the developed world. ठीक है? So if it is part of the developed world, these features are not essentially found. But this is part of the developing world. So can I say these features also make headlines here? Obviously yes. ठीक है? So that is the scenario of underpopulation. So हमने underpopulation देख लिया, overpopulation देख लिया. Even most we can say underpopulation is also something which is not desirable. So what is essentially desirable? Obviously it is the optimum population. ठीक है? So this is the scenario which is essentially desirable. And if we talk about the optimum population, इसका definition क्या हो सकता है? We can simply say it is a situation of population resource relationship. If you want, right? It is a situation of population resource relationship where highest possible living standards are attained for the maximum possible numbers ठीक है? So this is essentially the conception of optimum population. So यानी कि ये कैसा सिनारियो है? Can we say it is an ideal scenario where there is a balance between population and the resource? Can we say it is a scenario where the population growth is being matched by the resource growth? ठीक है? So that is the condition of optimum population. ठीक है? Tell me, can we say the developed countries can be classified to be located in this optimum population? It would be reflected in the highest possible living standards. And where the highest possible living standards are found? It is in the developed world. Okay? So very clearly we will see that the developed countries are located in this condition of optimum population. Okay? So I hope ये terms clear हो गए. What do we mean by over, under and optimum population? ठीक है? अब हम क्या करने वाले हैं? We are going to study the theories of population on the basis of this, and we will see the theories of population actually started with Malthus, a very famous scholar, and I hope you must have heard if you have studied in GS also. GS में भी Malthus का नाम आता है. ठीक है? So a very famous scholar. Sometimes it is said that the science of demography started with Malthus. ठीक है? So in fact, Malthus was the paradigm figure in demography, and we can talk about pre-Malthus and post-Malthus, because post-Malthus demography was totally different from the pre-Malthusian demography. ठीक है? और Malthus ने क्या किया? Nothing. Malthus just reminded the world of the problem of overpopulation. ठीक है? And from here what happened? The debate on population and resource ratio essentially started. ठीक है? We will see that before that nobody cared about population and the numbers. ठीक है? It was first Malthus who actually highlighted that the world would be facing the problem of overpopulation, and from there all this debate of demography has started. ठीक है? So we'll come to number of things, but think, अभी मैंने एक term use किया, demography can be divided into pre-Malthus and post-Malthus. ठीक है? और मैंने साथ में ये भी बोला कि pre-Malthusian period में what happened? Nobody cared about the high population growth. What could be the reason? Can you think of? एक मिनट देता हूं, सोचो. You brainstorm. I'll give you 1 minute. And when I give this time, it is a very crucial time. You try to make your brain work. ठीक है? Think. अभी जब मैं बताऊंगा तो all of you would feel कि ऐसा क्यों नहीं सोच पाया. I really thought कि that scenario of people speaking loudly in their mind occurs only in movies. I never knew that it occurs also in the classes. Okay. I'm just asking, what could have been the reason that in the initial period, people were less concerned with increasing numbers or high population growth? This is not the way. Okay, numbers were the resources, more the population. Okay, very good. This is what I wanted to hear. Most important reason, we will see. There were several reasons. Okay, बाद में उसको देखेंगे when we'll talk about fertility. When we'll study fertility patterns. We'll talk about that. But one of the most significant feature was what? That the mortality rates were very high. ठीक है? So if the mortality rates were very high, can I say if we produce less number of children, will there be chance that the society would finish? ठीक है? So to ultimately make sure that society continues, the viability of the society, what was made sure? That the birth rate was also very high. It was higher than the death rate. Okay? You can understand at that time or in the earlier periods, our technology was low. And essentially, because of that, we had to make sure that the birth rates were high. So, बाद में देखेंगे, this was the reasons of number of things which we see. Like आज की date में, as soon as you are crossing 28, 30, what is the most important pressure you begin to face? It is about the marriage. So almost all the societies of the world, you will find the concept of universal marriage. So why it was so? To make sure that people are integrated in the society, and if they are married, next question would be, where are the kids? So you are obligated to the society, and अगर ज़्यादा late हो गया तो people will start suggesting number of ways. So again, that was essentially the most important reason. We'll see other reasons were also there later on. But whatever, it was Malthus who started this debate on the population resource ratio. Before him, no one was talking about that. Okay? And we will see he gave his theory as a natural law theory. Okay? He tried to create a natural law. अब देखो, there are number of ways of speaking. अगर मुझे सपोज करो कि अपनी कोई बात कन्वे करनी है, आई कैन जस्ट प्लेनली से दैट कि ऐसा हो करोगे तो ऐसा होगा, ठीक है. बट इफ आई वॉन्ट टू मेक इट मोर पावरफुल, कैन आई से कि साथ में मैं कुछ एविडेंस या नंबर्स दे दूं? सो विल इट मेक मोर इंप्रेशन इन द माइंड ऑफ द पीपल? ठीक है. सो वी विल सी माल्थस ने भी क्या किया. He gave some numbers. He gave the idea of geometric and arithmetic progressions. So we'll see that they are ultimately they are nonsense. Nowhere it has been found that it would be true. Although India came very close, we'll see, to make Malthus true one time. We tried very hard. But whatever, in the real world demography, we have found that nowhere in the world it was found to be true. So that was the Malthusian theory, and with that what happened, several set of ideas began to start. Some supported Malthus, while some were against Malthus. So number of population theories essentially came. Like for example, one of the theories which we have or which we will be studying, it is actually mentioned not in population geography directly, it is mentioned in the models, theories and laws. ठीक है. So models, theories and laws में तीन theories हमें specifically पढ़ने के लिए बोला गया, Malthusian, Marxian and demographic transition model. ठीक है. So Malthusian, we will see Malthus was more of a capitalistic mindset person. So his ideas were opposed by Marx, Marxian theory. ठीक है. There were several others who also gave their various type of ideas, whether it was Mills, whether it was, if you talk about Arsene Dumont, several other theorists have given their ideas. और उस पे धीरे 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 build होता गया. And finally what happened, there was the development of, after Second World War, there was development of this concept of demographic transition. ठीक है. And today we will see that the primary theory which explains the demography, it is which theory? It is the demographic transition theory. ठीक है. So हम theories में कैसे जाएंगे? We will be starting with Malthus. We'll study some intermediate theories, and finally we would arrive at the final theory, that is the demographic transition theory. ठीक है. So I hope it is clear. So now I'm going to start with the Malthusian theory. So if we talk about Malthus, in a sense, the science of ecology जो हम पढ़ते हैं, ठीक है, it has a kind of beginning from where? From Malthus. ठीक है. Yes, Vikrant, you'll be getting printed notes if you have taken the admission. You can contact the office, they'll be giving you. Okay. So if you talk about, from here we will find that the science of ecology has its beginning. Now, Malthus, what he did, he wrote one essay, and the name of this essay was an essay on the principles of population, and it was given when? It was given in 1798. ठीक है. एक चीज याद रखना, जो भी चीजें मैं हाईलाइट करता हूं, those would be the things which should be printed in your mind. ठीक है, वो भूलना नहीं है. Why Malthus? Number of things were there. That was a time period when you can say that Europe started. In Europe, there was second stage of demographic transition was reached. So population began to grow during that period. Particularly, that was the period when industrialization era was also beginning. So most of the people got concentrated in the cities. So what began to take place in the cities? The population density rose. Okay? So he could see that there was a change coming, that there was population was increasing at very, very fast rate. And he could foresee that. So that was, he was a visionary, in fact, we can say that. Okay. So an essay on the principles of population. So some books I have read, the critiques of Malthus, which, you know, whenever there are visionaries, there would also be so many critics of them. So some of the critics of Malthus even criticized him. He is talking about population and population growth, but he himself had 12 children. But I have also read many authors who say that it was a lie. He didn't had such number of children. We'll talk about those things later. So essay on the principles of population. Okay. So in this essay, what he was trying to do, he was the first, you can see, first to claim the nexus between population and the resource, and propounded a population theory that seeks a very important point, natural law, which was governing the growth of population. Okay. So he was trying to formulate a natural law. और ये natural law हम कौन सा natural law देखेंगे? This natural law which he was trying to propound, it was the natural law which we study in ecology, that is the law of carrying capacity. Okay. So similar type of law he tried to formulate, a natural law. So if we talk about, पहले मैं थोड़ा सा simplify कर देता हूं, and then we'll discuss in more detail. So Malthusian theory, it was based upon, he formulated his theory on certain assumptions. Okay? Certain assumptions. So if we talk about assumptions, one of the important assumptions was that the food is necessary for the survival, or existence. So first very important assumption on which the theory is based. Okay? And second is that the passion between the sexes would remain at the present levels in the near future. In the near future. So again, two basic assumptions he has done, and from these assumptions what he is doing, he is extracting the theory. ठीक है, ही एक्सट्रैक्ट द थ्योरी. बाद में देखेंगे व्हेन विल स्टडी द पर्सपेक्टिव्स इन ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी, we'll see that this type of theory making is referred to as, or this method of theory making is referred to as deductive method. ठीक है, you deduce from. So his theory is which type of theory? It is a deductive theory. और देखो deductive theory में क्या किया जाता है? We take some natural universal truths, universal laws, and from those universal laws we extract other laws. ठीक है, so this type of theory making method is referred to as the deductive method. So his method was which type? It was deductive method. ठीक है, अब इसको मैं छोटा सा एक एग्जांपल लूं तो ज्यादा समझ में आ जाएगा. सपोज वी टॉक अबाउट इंडिया, ठीक है, एंड इंडिया में देयर आर पोर्ट्स लोकेटेड several places. Can we say with port we can be connected with the world? Are they the places from where information flows? Technology flow can be taking place. That means the places which would be near to these ports, will they be more developed? Hoga? We later see the diffusion phenomena. The diffusion of information would be greater. So this is the basic idea, where those places which are near to the coast, there will be greater diffusion of information. So can we say this is the natural law? अब इस natural law से क्या मैं extract कर सकता हूं? Can I extract that literacy would increase towards south? What I have done, from one law I have extracted another law. So this is basically what? This is the deductive method. ठीक है, इसके अपोजिट होता है इंडक्टिव मेथड. सो इंडक्टिव मेथड में क्या होता है? Suppose if I do census of India and then I come to this conclusion where I say that as you go towards south, what will happen? Literacy rate would increase. So there what I have done, I have studied individual cases, then found common patterns in them, then more common patterns, and then I made a natural law. So that method is inductive. ठीक है, देखेंगे demographic transition theory was inductive, but Malthusian theory is which type? It is deductive theory. It is based upon certain assumptions. ठीक है, so ये जो assumptions हैं Malthus के, these are the assumptions which are a kind of declared assumptions. ठीक है, उसने डायरेक्टली इसको क्या किया है? डिक्लेयर्ड कर दिया है. एक्सप्लिसिट assumptions कह सकते हैं. But there were some implicit assumptions as well in his idea. So this is not written in the books, but when you read the literature which has been written by Malthus, it becomes clear that he is essentially assuming those things as well. So there are some implicit assumptions. Implicit assumptions. So if we talk about the implicit assumptions, one very important assumption which was there in his mind was he believed in the idea of law of diminishing returns. Law of diminishing returns. ठीक है, so what is essentially the law of diminishing returns? Suppose I am investing somewhere, ठीक है, and if I keep increasing my investment, what will happen to my profits? Profits would also grow. If I increase further investment, then there will be further growth in the profits. ठीक है, but still there is a threshold value. And once I reach that threshold value, even if I keep on increasing the investment, what will happen? The profits would not be increasing at the same rate. There will be law of diminishing return. ठीक है, So this is the one of the basic idea which is implicit in his theory. That means उसका simply कहने का मतलब क्या था? What he was assuming that no matter you keep on investing in land, but what will be there? There will be ultimate limit of productivity beyond which the land would not be able to produce food. ठीक है? So one of the ideas which was implicit in his theory is this, the law of diminishing returns. And from this further we can say that another assumption was with respect to the limited capacity of science and technology. ठीक है? Limited capacity of science and technology. That means his idea of resource was which type? For him, the resources were static. Resources are given and not made by the human beings. ठीक है? So his view was with respect to the limited capacity of science and technology. In other words, he assumed the resources to be given. Resources to be given. That means they were natural endowments. They were not produced by human beings. ठीक है? आज हमारा idea of resources क्या कहता है? Present idea of resources says that resources are human made. Human beings create the resources by developing the technology. ठीक है? So the resources were given. They were like natural endowments. That means his view of resources was which type? Static view of resources. So he held the static view of resources. ठीक है? So there were some explicit assumptions. एग्जाम में जब हमें लिखना होगा तो हम कौन से assumptions की बात करेंगे? These one. For understanding, we'll also remember these assumptions. ठीक है? So that is the basic idea of Malthusian theory. On the basis of these assumptions, now he proposes the theory. ठीक है? So he essentially provides the propositions of the theory. So basic terms में what he is simply saying, he simply says that the human capacity, इसको लिख लो, the human's capacity to increase its number numbers is far higher than the Earth's capacity to produce subsistence. The Earth's capacity to produce subsistence. ठीक है? So this is the basic principle of Malthus. ठीक है? अब what he does, he essentially elaborates this idea. ठीक है? और जो मैंने बोला कि अपने आइडिया को और पावरफुल बनाने के लिए क्या करना होता है? We have to give some numbers, some figures. Can you understand? This will also apply in your answer writing. If you are writing generally, you'll get less marks. If you can also support it with some evidences, you'll be getting more marks. So then he moves on and says that the population capacity to grow is population capacity to, or population grows with geometric progression. Geometric progression, while subsistence with arithmetic progression. Subsistence with arithmetic progression. ठीक है. So if we look into the growth that would be taking place, population growth and subsistence growth. Population growth and subsistence growth. So ultimately what will happen? Population will keep on growing. It will keep on growing faster than the subsistence. What he believed, that the population's capacity, the capacity of population was that it would double itself in how much time period? In 25 years. ठीक है. So इसको भी लिख लो. Population had the capacity to double itself in 25 years. ठीक है. अब इसको अगर हम डायग्राम में दिखाना चाहें तो here is the time and here is the growth pattern. So this is the subsistence growth. This is essentially the growth of subsistence, and this is the population growth. ठीक है. So this is the population growth. So population always follows which type of curve? This is referred to as the J curve. ठीक है. It always follows the J curve. ठीक है. एक्चुअली पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ का कर्व कैसा होता है हम देखेंगे. पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ का जो रियल कर्व होता है, इट इज इन अ वे इट इज मोर लाइक एन एस कर्व. ठीक है. So all of these people, they were trying to do what? They were trying to explain this S curve through various ways. We'll see. So this is essentially the population growth. This is the population growth pattern which would be taking place. ठीक है. So essentially अब इस माल्थस के डायग्राम में हमने 3 कंसेप्ट्स पढ़े थे. Do you remember? Can we identify the location of those 3 situations? Can we say this point is O? ठीक है. So O is the point of what? It is the point of optimum population. ठीक है. So suppose तुम्हें optimum population पे लिखना है. Can we also say, can we talk about Malthus' idea on optimum population? So what is his idea on optimum population? Can we say it is short-lived? Yes or no? It is a temporary situation. ठीक है. Before this, which is the situation here? It is that of under population. And beyond this is the situation of over overpopulation. Lies the situation of overpopulation. ठीक है? So this is the basic one aspect of Malthusian idea or Malthusian theory, which he had written in his essay on population. Now, he also talks about the consequence of this phenomena. So if there is so much faster growth of population, what will be taking place? Can we say as a result of this, a situation of overpopulation would arise? Yes or no? And as a result of this, there would be several checks which would be applied on the population. Okay? It is a natural law that ultimately there would be checks on population. For example, think if in an area there the population of suppose grazing animals किसी forest में बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ जाए, if it increases too much, what will happen to that ecosystem or that forest? It would ultimately get degraded. ठीक है? So in ecology, we later study the concept of keystone species. So some keystone species are performing some important keystone processes which are maintaining the ecosystem, like the tiger, for example, the carnivore. It is keeping the number of the herbivores in check. ठीक है? Maintaining below the carrying capacity. It goes, once it goes beyond the carrying capacity, essentially what will happen? There will be so many types of problems, diseases, etc., etc., can rise, and the death rates would be increasing in the herbivores. Okay? And the entire ecosystem would degrade. So same concept is being applied by Malthus here. So if this situation arises, what will happen? Automatically there will be some checks which would be applied on this population growth. Okay? So this scenario leads to the problem of overpopulation. And when there is situation of overpopulation, already हमने देखा है, poverty, unemployment, and various problems of the society would be rising. ठीक है? So in this overpopulation, various problems like poverty, unemployment, inequality, etc. would be rising. ठीक है? So this is another aspect. What is the consequence of such growth? तो अभी तक जो हमने माल्थस में पढ़ा, क्या क्या पढ़ा है? फर्स्ट वी टॉक्ड अबाउट द एजम्पशन. ठीक है? देन as a result of the assumption, what was the growth patterns? Second thing हमने पढ़ा. Third, what we studied, consequence of that growth pattern. And now the fourth thing in his theory is the solutions. ठीक है? So what are the solutions to this problem? So if we talk about the solutions to these problems, according to him, what will happen? Once this scenario is reached, there would be several checks which would be applied on population growth. So लिख लो इसको. As the scenario of overpopulation is reached, several checks on population growth would apply. and he talked about two types of checks. One is, he called it them as the positive checks. As the positive checks. And second, he called them as the preventive checks. So two type of checks would be essentially applicable. So you can understand the sadist nature of Malthus. He keeps which type of checks in the positive category? He calls them as positive. So positive checks include the phenomena like famines, wars, epidemics. Okay. So with this, what is happening, etc. With such type of problems, what is taking place? The death rate would increase, and thus the population would reduce. There will be reduction in population. So such type of checks, he is calling them as the positive checks. If you talk about the preventive checks, in preventive checks, he talks about phenomena like delay in marriage, abstinence from sex, moral restraint, etc. ठीक है, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, हम बाद में इसको देखेंगे एज अ क्रिटिसिज्म. At the time period when he was present in France, there was widespread use of contraceptives, ठीक है, as birth control measure. But he didn't talk about the use of contraceptives as a birth control measure. ठीक है. So actually it has been written by many writers that Malthus actually was a clergyman. He was a religious person. ठीक है. तो बाद में देखेंगे पर्सपेक्टिव्स में, देयर आर टू टाइप ऑफ रिलीजन्स. वन टाइप ऑफ रिलीजन इज द यूनिवर्सल रिलीजन एंड द सेकेंड टाइप ऑफ रिलीजन इज द रीजनल रिलीजन्स. सो जो यूनिवर्सल रिलीजन्स होते हैं, व्हाट दे वांट टू डू, दे वांट टू कन्वर्ट द एंटायर अर्थ इनटू टू देयर फेथ. ठीक है. दे वांट टू इंक्रीज द नंबर ऑफ फॉलोअर्स. Can we say that there are two methods of increasing the number of followers? One, you convert other people to your faith. That is one. Second is, if your population growth is high, can we say then also there will be more number of people? Okay. So in many of these religions, use of such contraceptives was prohibited, and it was also part and parcel of Catholic Christianity. He was very clearly follower of the Catholic Christianity, and thus he adhered to such idea. ठीक है. Some have also written that his idea was also in line with some other greats like Mahatma Gandhi. So Mahatma Gandhi was also in this similar kind of, his idea was also on similar lines. He was also, he didn't advocated the use of contraceptives, etc. He also favored the methods like moral restraints. And if you have read his book, his biography, he has talked so much about those moral restraints. ठीक है. So basically ये जो idea है, it also actually comes from religion, and it believes that if people are given the choice of having sex but not having children, then what will happen? They will stop working. ठीक है. It is the love for the children ultimately which makes people work hard. And if they don't have children, what will happen? People will become lethargic. They will not like to work. Okay. So again, all these could be the fundamental, if you talk about the causes of why he didn't actually advocated the use of contraceptives. So basically we can say he was a clergyman, and thus he was against such idea. So that is basically the solutions which were given by Malthus. Okay. I hope it is clear. इतनी ही थ्योरी है माल्थस की, और इतना ही याद करना है. ठीक है. बहुत सारी चीजें यहां पर लिखी हुई हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, If you read in the books, what happens? This is the things. Books would keep on repeating so many things. And in brief, Malthus, the need of food for food, passion between sexes. So several such things are written. हमें याद करने के लिए क्या बनाने होते हैं? फ्रेमवर्क्स बनाने होते हैं, सो दैट वी नेवर फॉरगेट. हमने माल्थस में क्या किया? हमने 4 फ्रेमवर्क याद करने. वन, वी हैव टू रिमेंबर द assumptions. Suppose I am making notes of this same content. तो notes कैसे होने चाहिए? One word in my notes would be वो जो हमने लिखा था, essay on population 1798. That would be just one word I'll remember. Another word I'll remember is deductive theory. ठीक है. उसके बाद I'll remember about the theory. One, I'll remember assumptions. इसमें 2 word. I will just write food and sexes. केवल food से मुझे पूरा sentence याद आ जाएगा कि नहीं आ जाएगा? I'll be able to remember. ठीक है. With sexes, again I'll be able to remember the full sentence. Then I'll talk about the proposition, or sorry, the pattern of growth that he talks about. So pattern of growth में can we say that अगर मैं अपने notes बना रहा हूँ तो something I like this should be written: population growth far outweighs the subsistence growth. This is growing through geometric progression and this is arithmetic progression. ठीक है. अब केवल मुझे ये रिवाइज करना है, सारी चीज याद आ जाएगी, वट एवर इज रिटन. ठीक है. सो इफ यू जस्ट फोकस ऑन रिवाइजिंग द कीवर्ड्स, 2 फायदे होंगे. यू विल बी एक्चुअली एबल टू मेमोराइज एंड रिकॉल. ठीक है. सेकेंड, when you will be writing, it will be in your own language. ठीक है. सो जो पर्सनलाइजेशन है, that would also come into being. ठीक है. Similarly, if you talk about third consequence of such pattern, and this is overpopulation. And fourth, I have to remember the case of solution and positive and preventive. ठीक है. तुम लोग कैसे नोट्स बनाते हो? Some of you bring your notes to me and literally it is 70% of the text which is written there. Notes should not be more than this. ठीक है. So if your stage is still not the stage where you are confident enough कि just through these keywords I will be able to recall the entire text, then better not make the notes at that stage. Revise again many times and then reach to this stage of making notes. ठीक है. So this is the basic idea which was given by Malthus. Obvious सी बात है, Malthus, can you understand, he was writing this in which period? 1798. ठीक है. So he was a visionary. He could foresee the future, what was going to come. So tell me, when he was writing this, was he against religion? In a way, was he writing against religion? Because religion क्या कहता है? You keep on growing the numbers. ठीक है. Second, tell me, what would the capitalists want? Because by that time there was already rise of capitalism and industrialization. So capitalists को क्या फायदा होगा if there are more number of people? Will the labor be cheaper? ठीक है. So can you understand? Most of the people of the society would have been against what was being talked about by the Malthus. So his theory was subjected to great deal of criticism. ठीक है. His theory was subjected to great deal of criticism. ठीक है, I'll just give you 1 minute brainstorm कि सपोज अगर तुम्हें इतना पढ़ने के बाद क्रिटिसिज्म थिंक करके लिखना होता तो क्या लिखते? So Arif is saying not considered scientific research. Okay, Vikrant is saying resource static, population growth in real different. Okay, ठीक है. I know many of you would have brainstormed. Some of you wouldn't have brainstormed. ये भी मुझे पता है. Whatever be the category, think. दो तरीके होते हैं ब्रेनस्टॉर्मिंग के. One is random brainstorming. In random brainstorming, we would never be able to generate lots of points. ठीक है? But if I brainstorm on certain points, can I say I will be able to generate more number of points? ठीक है? Sequential भी हो जाएगा, arranged भी हो जाएगा. So think, could we have started from the assumptions? We could have essentially started from the assumptions. There is some mistakes which are there, or not mistakes, some correlations he has done wrong. So we could have started with the assumptions. We could have talked about the growth patterns. दोनों के बारे में कुछ कुछ बात कर सकते थे. ठीक है. Overpopulation consequences he talks about, poverty etc etc. But tell me, क्या भी हमने देखा था कि same consequences are also found in underpopulation scenario? That means there must be some other factors which are determining these consequences rather than just population. ठीक है? And even in solutions, can you see, he is stressing most which one? It is the positive checks. ठीक है? In fact, वो क्या लिखता है, इसमें एक लाइन भी लिख सकते हो कि एक लाइन लिख लो इसको. Despite the application of preventive checks, comma, a scenario would not arise where positive checks are not applicable in more or less regular fashion. ठीक है? तो ये ट्रांसलेशन है जो माल्थस ने फ्रेंच में लिखा है, उसका ट्रांसलेशन. सो इट बिकम्स, सेंटेंस बिकम्स डिफिकल्ट. In simple terms, what he means to say, that the efficacy of preventive checks will be less and the population will always be controlled by the application of positive checks. ठीक है? So this is his basic idea. In other words, we will see. अभी हम इसके बारे में बात करेंगे. So these are इसके लाइंस पर हम बहुत सारी चीजें लिख सकते हैं. ठीक है, आर वी क्लियर? तो एक एक करके लिखते हैं क्रिटिसिज्म को. So first, if we talk about one important criticism of Malthusian theory, इसके कौन से दो assumptions थे? Food is necessary for survival. Can we say इसमें कोई criticism नहीं किया जा सकता? No doubt. Food is necessary for survival. Second, passion between sexes would remain the same in future. That is also something which we assume it would be true. But still, the problem in Malthusian theory is that what he is assuming here, his implicit assumption here is that he correlates sex and the necessity to produce children. ठीक है, he correlates both of these. Can we say sex is a biological need while having children is a social need? ठीक है, both are different, you cannot correlate them. ठीक है, so इसको लिख लेते हैं. Malthusian assumption where he discusses the case of desire or sex between the opposite genders. Confuses the need to have sex with the need to have children. With the need to have children. Full stop. The first one is a biological need. The first one is a biological need, while the latter is a social need. ठीक है, so can we say social needs can actually change with time? Can we see that as societies are advancing, this need has declined? Can we see as the mortality rates have declined, has the need to have more number of children also declined along with that? ठीक है, so social needs can change with the changes in the society. Biological needs we cannot be sure, may be or may not be. How you can say that? यार, जब हम fertility पढ़ेंगे तो देखेंगे कि what many things we think about what is true is actually was made inbuilt by the society. ठीक है, for example, are you married? You are not married. Okay, when you will get married, you will see कि बहुत धूम धड़ाके से शादी होगी. ठीक है, at that day you ask yourself a question कि मैंने अपनी लाइफ में ऐसा क्या उखाड़ा है कि धूम धड़ाके से शादी हो रही है. So many things which we actually see, which have become a part of ourselves, actually they were inbuilt with certain purposes. ठीक है, when we'll talk about fertility, we'll discuss that. Okay, so that is the first very very important criticism, assumption. Then second पर आते हैं. If you remember this, you'll remember the entire Malthusian theory. Next पर आते हैं second criticism. And second criticism, first we'll talk about the population growth. So Malthus, what he says, लिखो इसको. Malthusian calculations that the population doubles itself in a matter of 25 years in a matter of 25 years has been found to be nowhere applicable, has been found to be nowhere applicable in the recorded, nowhere applicable in the recorded demographic history of the world. ठीक है? So again, this is one big problem. He over calculated the growth of population or population's capacity to grow itself. ठीक है? Then if you talk about second, third point हम लिख सकते हैं about subsistence growth. आगे लिखो. The Malthusian idea that subsistence growth with subsistence grows with arithmetic progression is based upon his limited view of resources, full stop. This idea has been criticized. This idea has been criticized by the technocentric, या फिर इसको एक और नाम से हम बुलाते हैं cornucopian, by the technocentric or the cornucopian viewpoint. Cornucopian view. So what this view believes? This view believes that resources are not given. They are produced by the humans. So लिख लो, this view believes that resources are not given. Resources are not given, but are produced by the humans through development of technology. Full stop. In fact, population growth creates the demand for resources. Population growth creates the demand for resources, which in turn stimulates the necessity for technological breakthroughs or technological innovations. ठीक है? सो अगर हम वर्ल्ड के पैटर्न को देखें तो दिस वाज द बेसिक आइडिया ऑफ माल्थस जो अभी हमने देखा था. दिस इज द माल्थुसियन व्यू. बट कैन वी से कि इफ वी लुक इनटू द वर्ल्ड हाउ इट हैज ग्रोन, नो डाउट द पॉपुलेशन हैज grown something like this. But if we talk about the resource or the food, has the growth of food resources taken this type of course? Can we say this would have been the juncture of the first agricultural revolution? Then essentially there was the industrial revolution, which further increased the capacity of the population. Then has there been green revolution, and can I say, are we on the verge of the second green revolution or the biotechnology revolution? Okay, so this technocentric idea, what it says, it believes in the dynamic concept of the resources. Resources are not static, they are not given. They're basically what? They're dynamic, they're produced by the human beings. Okay, or simple सी एक, you must have heard about one phrase. Can we say that necessity is the mother of all inventions? Okay, so if population keeps on growing, will there be necessity of resources? And does it means that there would also be the growth of technology, new innovations? Obviously. So that is the basic idea. In fact, इसमें हम इसको एक और expand करते हैं टेक्नोसेंट्रिक और माल्थस के डिबेट को. Malthus was of the view that there is the law of diminishing return, which is applicable to the land resource. So land has basically what? It has limited capacity. That means the productivity of land can be increased to a certain level, and beyond that, what will happen? The productivity will begin to decline. So you cannot keep on getting increase in the productivity to unlimited levels. Okay? But do we find that in reality today we are talking about hydroponics, we are talking about aeroponics, we are talking about vertical agriculture? Okay? So can we actually say that the capacity that the technology can provide us can be actually unlimited? Okay? On the same land? तो इसको भी लिख लेते हैं. देखो, for example, Malthus believed in the idea of law of diminishing returns. Law of diminishing returns applicable to the land resource. Applicable to the land resource. Full stop. Thus, he saw land having limited potential or capacity to increase productivity. ठीक है, इसको हम कैसे शो कर सकते हैं? So land had a limit, a carrying capacity limit. ठीक है, so this was the limit of land. And if the population grows beyond this limit, what will happen? There will be application of which type of checks? Positive checks would be applicable and population would decline. ठीक है, आगे लिखो। However, however, the recent technological growth manifested in vertical farming, vertical farming has shown that the actual capacity of land to produce subsistence may be unlimited. To produce subsistence or food may be unlimited. ठीक है, so this is one very very important problem in the Malthusian theory. Then Malthus also talks about that as a result of overpopulation, several problems would be on the rise, like it would be manifested in unemployment, poverty, poor living standards. They will essentially become rule. ठीक है, but he is correlating this phenomena with overpopulation. We do find that in the world, same problems also exist in the scenarios of underpopulation. So इसको भी लिख लेते हैं. Next point. लिखो. Malthus believed that the mismatch between population and subsistence growth would lead to overpopulation. It would, full stop, it in turn would be reflected in problems like poverty, unemployment, poor living standards, hunger, etc. Full stop. So this is the basic idea of the Malthus. आगे लिखो. Critics have argued that these same symptoms are also found in underpopulated regions of the world. For example, the sub-Saharan Africa. Full stop. This means that there are other factors as well. Which determine the relation of population with resources. ठीक है, so that is another aspect. Then solutions पे आते हैं. Next point. Now Malthus has done what? He has clearly overemphasized the efficacy of the positive checks to the neglect of the other ways of managing the population. ठीक है, so देखो, Malthusian views are seen as highly pessimistic. highly pessimistic, where he emphasized or overemphasized, लिखो, where he overemphasized the efficacy of positive checks. ठीक है? So his ideas are very, very pessimistic. In other words, can we say he is anti-humanist? ठीक है? In a way, because he doesn't have believe in the power of humans to control their numbers. ठीक है? He is essentially what? He is anti-humanist. So लिख लो. In other words, he is anti-humanist. Anti-humanist who doesn't has believe, who doesn't has believe in the capacity of human beings, in the capacity of human beings to manage their numbers. To manage their numbers. ठीक है? सो ये भी क्रिटिसिज्म हो गया. अब देखेंगे एक और क्रिटिसिज्म है माल्थस का. एंड because Malthus, if you talk about, he was essentially pro-capitalism. ठीक है? He held a view which was pro-markets. And thus he would be criticized by whom? He would be essentially criticized by Marx. ठीक है? सो एक और क्रिटिसिज्म जो इसके अलावा, इस फ्रेमवर्क के अलावा हमें याद रखना है, दैट इज द मार्क्सियन क्रिटिसिज्म. सो लिख लो इसको भी. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट. Malthus was a firm believer, in the market-based politico-economic system. Firm believer in the market-based politico-economic system. Full stop. He has been criticized by Marx for this belief. Full stop. Marx sees Malthusian theory. Marx sees Malthusian theory as an instrument to support the evils of capitalism. To support the evils of capitalism. ठीक है? For example, think, Malthus is saying that the resources are given. ठीक है? So this can be scenario A and this can be the scenario B. So here is the resources. So in scenario A, this is the resources. In scenario B, this is the resource level. ठीक है? So for example, imagine करते हैं, can we say, suppose this is a desert. Here we can say it is a fertile alluvial plains. So now tell me, in which of these do you think that the positive checks would first apply? Can we say it would be A? यहाँ पर ऑलरेडी रिसोर्सेस कम है, तो पॉपुलेशन जैसे ही ग्रो करेगी, इट वुड बी क्रॉसिंग द थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट्स. ठीक है? सो कैन आई से हियर द स्टैंडर्ड्स ऑफ लिविंग वुड बी लोअर कंपेयर टू हियर. ठीक है? सो अकॉर्डिंग टू माल्थस, टेल मी, do we find that he treats inequality or these problems as space dependent? Yes or no? Will it be variable from space to space? He's seeing these problems as space dependent, they're given. Okay, that means he is trying to say they are natural. They have not been produced by any politico-economic system. They are natural. It is naturally going to occur. Okay? But we will see when we'll study the Marxian theory, he shows that how the inequality is actually not space dependent but time dependent. Okay? So when we'll study the Marxian theory, we'll see that in reality, in the primitive times, there was a kind of primitive communism. Communism is a system where community controls the resources. So there was initially a primitive communism. And then we will see that a period came in Europe where the king decided that we have to increase the fertility of the land. ठीक है? And thus what they did, बाद में इसको समझाऊंगा how it can happen. They implemented a system referred to as feudalism. So with feudalism, what happened? The land ownership was concentrated in only few hands. Before it was community was controlling it. Now the land ownership went to only few people, the feudal landlords. And the others became what? Agricultural laborers. Okay? So tell me, from here, can we say inequality? Will it begin to rise? The landlords, they would become rich. The laborers, what will happen to them? They would become more poor. ठीक है? Later, बाद में देखेंगे, ultimately, the same people who were the landlords with technological breakthrough which occurred in after the Renaissance period, there was industrial revolution. So those same people became the capitalists because they had the capital. Okay? So there came the era of capitalism. So with capitalism, what has happened with inequality? It has further kept on increasing. Okay? So this was the basic idea which was held by Marx, that inequality is what? Can we say here it is time dependent? As you continue in this system, the inequality will keep on increasing more and more. ठीक है? So लिख लेते हैं इसको. देखो, for example, Malthus sees inequality. Malthus sees inequality as space dependent. As space dependent. Full stop. In other words, it is natural and depends upon the resource base of the region, which in turn is given. Resource base of the region, which in turn is given. Full stop. Marx is critical of this view. Marx is critical of this view, as he believes that inequality is outcome of the politico-economic system. Politico-economic system, and is thus time dependent. Full stop. In capitalism, it is more related with the distribution of resources. एक word add कर लो, unequal distribution of resources. Unequal distribution of resources rather than the availability of resources. rather than the availability of resources. ठीक है? So think, which are the parts of the world which are most affected by famines? Can we say the agricultural rural landscapes are the places which are most affected by famines? And don't you think that it is a paradox? The places which are producing food, they are getting affected by famine. So how it is so? बाद में देखेंगे, it is outcome of the trade equations which have been created, the terms of trade, which is outcome of what? Which is outcome of the politico-economic system. We give value to certain things more than the others. ठीक है? And as a result, जब exchange value आएगी, तो what will happen? Because certain things are considered more valuable. As a result, when agricultural commodities would be exchanged for those certain things, the ratio would be very, very unequal. And the people who would be producing these agricultural commodities, what will happen to them? They would be very poor. Okay? So that is another big issue in the Malthusian theory. So these are the criticisms which are related in the Malthusian theory. Now, so इतना ज़्यादा criticism हो गया Malthus का. Can you understand that he would also थोड़ा सा back foot पे तो आ ही गया होगा. He actually came to little bit on back foot, and the story of Malthus doesn't stops here. The story continues. In fact, he wrote a second essay on population. ठीक है? And in this essay, he further elaborated his ideas. Although now he had understood few things. One, he had understood that कि अगर वो यहाँ पर सिंपली यहीं पर रुक जाता, सॉरी, हमने यहाँ पर एक लाइन लिखा था, दैट कैपेसिटी ऑफ पॉपुलेशन टू ग्रो itself is far greater than the capacity of earth to grow subsistence. So he understood that if he wouldn't have given these geometric progressions and arithmetic progressions, then what would have happened? There was greater chance people would have accepted his ideas. ठीक है? Because ultimately, if you want to reject someone, what you'll do? You'll find the minute weaknesses, even the small weaknesses which are there, and that would become the rallying point of criticism. Okay? So when he began to write again, what he did, he was comparatively little bit more moderate, not so much extremist. He less emphasized on these progressions. Okay? And also began to little bit talk about what? The preventive checks. ठीक है? He has also written a lot on population policy. ठीक है? तो अब उसकी बात करते हैं. So change the paragraph. This is not written in the material given to you. So you'll have to write this part. So देखो, following the criticism or following the severe criticism, there was a change in Malthus. There was a change in Malthus's approach towards population. Full stop. In his later writings, he became comparatively more moderate. Full stop. He emphasized more on the concept. Rather than the progressions and numbers. Rather than the progressions and numbers. full stop. Moreover, he also wrote elaborately. He also wrote elaborately on the preventive checks as a method to control population. Full stop. In this context, full stop. In this context, he also wrote extensively on population policy. Okay. So now let us see what Malthus had to say on population policy. So the heading is Malthusian views on population policy. Malthusian views on population policy. Okay. So number of things. Malthus was firm believer. First very important thing was that Malthus was firm believer in the idea that their state should not interfere in the demographic matters. ठीक है. So पहला point लिखो. First, Malthus was of the firm belief that state should not interfere. State should not interfere in the demographic matters. In the demographic matters. Full stop. Thus, he was against the idea of welfare state. ठीक है. So he was against the idea of welfare state. Welfare state में क्या होता है? Can we say in welfare state more resources are given to the people by the government? ठीक है. What is the relationship between resource availability and population growth? If more resources are available, what will happen with the population? It will further grow. ठीक है. So he was against the idea of welfare state. That is first important aspect. Second point, Malthus believed that there was no need for having any specific fertility policy or population policy. Full stop. According to him, the economic policy itself should work as population policy. ठीक है. So that was his another belief. Then third point, देखो, he believed that अभी उसी पे आ रहा है. He believed that the market based economic policy was most appropriate for population control. market-based population policy was most appropriate for population control. Full stop. Market has inbuilt incentives and disincentives mechanisms. Market has inbuilt incentives and disincentive mechanisms which promote discipline in the population with respect to population growth. ठीक है. सो अब इसका एक एग्जाम्पल लेते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, if you talk about in market, there are several incentives. So अगर हम incentives की बात करें, can we say in market based economies there is incentives like we can have ownership of property? Yes or no? In market based systems we can have ownership of property, and it is a very strong motivation for the people. ठीक है. Similarly, in market based mechanisms, can we say that there can be higher living standards with higher work or hard work? If one does more hard work, can he attain higher living standards? सीधी सी बात है, ज्यादा पढ़ोगे, मेहनत करोगे तो आईएएस बन सकते हो. ठीक है. So ownership of property, higher living standards with higher hard work, these were seen as what? Incentives. ठीक है. So tell me, if people are working hard, they are giving more time of them in work, what will happen to their other need of producing children? Can I say it can be postponed? ठीक है. Will it work in a way where, for example, suppose today we see that women are also working, or they are also entering into the workforce in larger numbers, and very clearly does it means that the marriage age would be postponed? ठीक है. There will be postponement of the marriage age. बाद में देखेंगे fecundity is the ability of women to produce children. ठीक है. So fecundity is one of the highest in the women which is aged between 16 to 22. Then it further declines from 22 to 28. Then it further declines beyond 28 to 34. So there are segments of ages where the fecundity is higher. So now can we see that the average age, for example, in India has become more or less, urban India में at least देखें तो beyond 28, something like this, at least 25 के बाद ही marriage हो रहा है. ठीक है. So because of that, what will happen? The ability to produce children would be what? Lesser. That means the chances of conception would be lesser. So will it impact the fertility? Obviously it would impact the fertility. So in this case, if there are such kind of incentives available, what will happen? More time of the people will go into achieving their desires and less in, if you talk about having children or fulfilling the needs of the society. ठीक है. So these incentives would by itself they would work to reduce the population or fertility. Similarly, there is several disincentives, and one very important disincentive is what? The cost of bearing or cost of child bearing or raising of the child is borne by the parents. Cost of child raising or bearing the child is borne by the parents. ठीक है, सो टेल मी, अभी इंडिया में फॉर एग्जाम्पल हम देखते हैं कि देर इज डिक्लाइनिंग फर्टिलिटी. फर्टिलिटी इज वेरी क्लियरली डिक्लाइनिंग इन इंडिया. नाउ टेल मी, कैन वी से देर हैव बीन इम्पैक्ट ऑफ अदर फैक्टर्स एज वेल? लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल एक स्कीम है सर्व शिक्षा अभियान. ठीक है, तो सर्व शिक्षा अभियान से हो क्या रहा है? नो डाउट गवर्नमेंट इज प्रोवाइडिंग फ्री एजुकेशन एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा. ठीक है, but because of Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, has it happened that now the children which would otherwise would have been child labor, now they are going to school? ठीक है, so जो फायदा होता था to the parents because of the child labor, that benefit now they are unable to derive, and children are going to school. ठीक है, even if government is providing education, free education, still can I say there are other cost of having children? ठीक है, and they have to be born by whom? By the parents. So can we see that the effect of this is visible in the declining fertility? It is one of the factors which is leading to the decline in fertility. ठीक है, so disincentives में, as we said, the cost of the child raising is entirely borne by the parents. And does this means that if you have more number of children, what will happen to your standards of living? They would be reduced. ठीक है, they would essentially be reduced, and again it would work as a disincentives to have more number of children. So this is the basic idea of Malthus on population policy. Now if we look into, बाद में हम देखेंगे इसको, if we look into the population policy which was adopted by the first world countries till the world wars, they followed the idea of Malthus on population policy. They didn't had any declared population or fertility policy. They had basically what? The market based mechanism. This market based mechanism, what it did, it brought the fertility down in these countries. In fact, बाद में देखेंगे, India was the first country to have a declared fertility control policy in the world. ठीक है, so एक और लाइन लिख लेते हैं, change the paragraph. This idea of Malthus, has been used by the first world countries as their population policy, full stop. These countries never had any declared fertility control policy, and relied on the market based mechanism as a primary instrument of population control. ठीक है, कैन वी से कि एक तरह से ये आइडियाज टुडे दे आर ऑल्सो बीइंग यूज्ड इन द डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज. हैज द मार्केट बेस्ड मैकेनिज्म स्प्रेड and has it become more global? ठीक है, so these ideas have now even spread to where? To the developing world. बाद में देखेंगे इसको और. So that is basically the idea of Malthus. Now एक क्वेश्चन पूछा जा सकता है एग्जाम में, वही तो किया ना उसने, क्या बोला? there is no need for any fertility policy. Economic policy itself would act as the population control or the fertility policy. So here the market, हमने example लिया ना, where the market is providing the incentives and disincentives for population control. ठीक है? Okay. So the question which can be asked is, examine the contemporary relevance of Malthusian ideas. Contemporary relevance of Malthusian ideas. And I will give you 3 minutes. Think, brainstorm. Just 1 minute here. Vikrant has asked a very relevant question, and he is asking that which notes to read, the ones you dictate in the class, the ones we'll get as the handouts. I am not dictating always. First of all, at places I am dictating. ठीक है, माल्थस की थ्योरी बहुत सिंपल है, उसको कॉम्प्लिकेट कर दिया है बुक्स ने, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा, इतना सारा उसमें टेक्स्ट डाल के. सो आई जस्ट ट्राई टू शो यू टुडे दैट हाउ सिंपली इट कैन बी रिमेंबर्ड एंड हाउ फ्यू थिंग्स यू हैव टू एक्चुअली रिमेंबर. ठीक है, और वो बहुत आसान है याद करना. So I was dictating. So I will keep on dictating in between at some places, not always. ठीक है? There will be occasions where I'll just be using the handouts. So I think mix of both रखना पड़ेगा. And if you just mix both these things, the content which you'll be getting in the class, it will be more than enough, and you will not need to look anywhere else. ठीक है? Okay. Again, continue your task. Okay. So again, repeating again, what will be our approach? The approach would be the handouts as the core of our material, and we will supplement the class jottings which we'll do in the class on over it. Okay. So handouts should be the core of or the basic material that you'll be studying. Okay. So examine the contemporary relevance of the Malthusian ideas. When I'm reading and going through this question, there is this term examine, and examine का मतलब क्या हुआ? do we also have to write the other or the critical view, that how there is lack of relevance or how there are shortcomings? ठीक है. So contemporary relevance of Malthusian ideas. So I can start with an introduction. और देखेंगे one of the theories we will talk about is the neo-Malthusian. ठीक है. So the term which we use is neo-Malthusian. Neo-Malthusian are the people who believe in the ideas of Malthus, and they have presented the ideas of Malthus in more contemporary way. ठीक है, in contemporary scenario. So those are referred to as the neo-Malthusians. ठीक है. So can I say, जब मैं introduction लिख रहा हूं तो उनका नाम यूज कर सकता हूं? That would be a way. So I can say that according to the neo-Malthusians, the contemporary world is facing several grave problems. Which is a reflection of the applicability. Of Malthusian ideas. ठीक है. So we can start like this. Now can we get those grave problems? Can we talk about these grave problems as a way of supporting Malthus? Is the world today facing various type of grave problems? Can we say that? Like for example, tell me, are we facing the problem of climate change or global warming? ठीक है. So can we talk about climate change or global warming? एक आइडिया हो सकता है. ठीक है. Similarly, are we facing the problem, other problems like, has the poverty or there is extreme poverty found in many parts of the world? ठीक है. So there has been increase in poverty in many parts of the world, not everywhere but many parts of the world. ठीक है. Others, can we take the example of the recent COVID-19, the pandemic of COVID-19? That can also be said as a kind of positive check which was there. ठीक है. So we can take some examples. The world is facing the problems and we can talk about. So for example, climate change की बात करें. First, global warming or climate change. So what is the basic idea? Can we say this is the capacity of atmosphere to recycle carbon dioxide or greenhouse gases? ठीक है. But what has happened with the emission of the greenhouse gases? Greenhouse gases has essentially increased. ठीक है. या फिर मैं इसमें कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड ले सकता हूं. We know that pre-industrial levels में कितना था वो? 280 ppm. Remember? 280 ppm था. What has happened now? It has increased to over 400 ppm से ऊपर हो गया. ठीक है. And why this has taken place? Why these emissions have increased? Malthus believes that this is outcome of what? Increase in population. Increase in population has resulted into it. So this is essentially in support of the Malthusian idea. Similarly, several neo-Malthusians, like for example, one famous Robert Kaplan. Robert Kaplan. What they see that the increasing, लिख लो इसको, they see that the increasing violence and civil unrest in the sub-Saharan African region, is a manifestation of the resource crisis with increasing population. Resource crisis with increasing population. Full stop. The rise of authoritarian regimes. The rise of authoritarian regimes is further reflective of this resource crisis. Authoritarian regimes is further reflective of this resource crisis. ठीक है. So what they believe, New Malthusian believe कि अगर democracy has to flourish, what democracy requires? It requires abundance of resources. ठीक है. When there is abundance of resources, then only the democracy can flourish. If there is resource crisis, then what will happen? Then some authoritarian regimes would be rising and they would determine the distribution of the resources. ठीक है. So in Africa, if it is happening, it is in fact reflective of what? According to them, it is reflective of the resource crisis. So that is another. Similarly, we talked about the COVID-19. So लिखो इसको भी. Next point or next paragraph. In recent time, the rise of COVID-19 is said to be a positive check on the population of the world. So stop. It is believed that it grew from one of the most densely populated parts of the world. That is, कहाँ से निकला था? In Wuhan, China. That is Wuhan, China. Full stop. Moreover, the maximum spread of this pandemic was also seen in the most densely populated parts of the world. Like अगर हम developed countries में भी बात करें तो which areas were more severely affected, urban or rural? It was urban. And urban areas में क्या होता है? Do we find higher population density in the cities? ठीक है. So very clearly there is higher population density in the cities. So again we can give some points in support of द माल्थूजियन थ्योरी. बट वी नो दैट हमें क्या करना है, एग्जामिन भी करना है, क्रिटिसिज्म भी करना है. और जब भी मुझे क्रिटिसिज्म करना होगा तो मैं किसको याद करूंगा, आई विल रिमेंबर एन इक्वेशन, आई इज इक्वल टू पैट. So I here is the impact on the environment. P here is the population size. A here is the effluence या फिर इसको बोलते हैं consumption patterns. And T here is the technology. So tell me, can we say that Malthus just sees the impact on environment being outcome of only one factor, population size? Is he neglecting the other two factors of technology and consumption patterns? ठीक है, he is very clearly neglecting them. So both we can talk about. So if we take the factor of climate change, so इसको लिख लो एक बार, change the paragraph and say, although these views seem to be systematic, but they try to simplify the reality. Full stop. In real world, the environmental impact is not just function of population size, but also the technology and consumption patterns. Full stop. For example, tell me, who is the most responsible, or which countries are most responsible for the present global warming? Can we say it is the first world countries? And first world countries population is actually smaller. ठीक है, what is ultimately their footprint, or the per capita emission is very very high. ठीक है, so again, is it outcome of the consumption pattern? Obviously yes, it is outcome of the consumption pattern as well. Can we say, however, it is also outcome of technology? Since industrial revolution, can we say that we have been using a technology which was based upon fossil fuels burning? So that has also been a very very important factor. So लिख लो इसको. For example, the contemporary global warming is not only outcome of growing population numbers, but also the fossil fuel based technology and very high effluence levels seen in the Western world. Very high effluence levels seen in the Western world. ठीक है, अब देखो, जब मैंने ये लिखा तो मेरे को बहुत टेंडेंसी होगी कि मैं इसको और एक्सप्लेन करूं, बट वहां पर मुझे क्या करना है, अपनी इस टेंडेंसी को कट डाउन कर देना, बिकॉज ऑलरेडी आई हैव रिटन सो मेनी वर्ड्स. ठीक है, ये कीवर्ड्स जो लिख दिए हमने, एफ्लुएंस एटसेट्रा, इट इज मोर देन एनफ. ठीक है, सो दैट इज वन. कैन वी से इंक्रीज इन पॉवर्टी इन मेनी पार्ट्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड? नंबर ऑफ रीजंस आर देयर. फॉर एग्जांपल, हमने अफ्रीका की बात की. So in Africa, poverty is function of number of factors. Like for example, in Africa, can we say technological breakthrough has been limited? ठीक है, impact of technological breakthroughs in Africa have been limited. Tell me, green revolution has been successful in which crops? Can we say in the cereal crops? Can we say these crops are not important crops of Africa? They are not the staple crops of Africa. That means the green revolution technology has not impacted the African continent. And thus they are still dependent upon the import of food. Okay? So one factor is no doubt the factor of technology. Can we say there are other factors also, like the factor of affluence? Can we say the present, if we look into the present poverty levels in the developing world, can they be related to the phenomena of colonization? Beginning कहाँ पर दिखता है हमें? There was colonization where there was exploitation of resources from these developing countries. ठीक है? Can we say the faulty terms of trade which were created, have they continued? Obviously, yes. There is basically what? There is a kind of resource periphery models which have developed. There are some core periphery, cores, and there is periphery. Okay? So core is doing what? It is taking the advantage of the resources of the periphery countries. So periphery countries are either selling resource or the raw material or semi-finished products. And what they are doing? They are buying the finished products at costly rate. Okay? So that is also the affluence standards, the consumption rates, they are also the factor which are determining beside technology in this case of poverty. ठीक है? So इसको भी लिख लेते हैं. In case of Africa, the poverty levels are result of lack of technological breakthroughs. Lack of technological breakthroughs. For example, the green revolution technology didn't spread. The green revolution technology did not spread to the staple crops of Africa. To the staple crops of Africa. Full stop. Moreover, Africa finds itself in the periphery, which is being exploited by the core countries. For its resources. ठीक है? So कहने का मतलब है distribution of resources also important. Same thing, can we talk about the COVID-19? Can we say if we actually look into the history of the world, do we find that even in the past there were epidemics and pandemics? And at that time the population size of the world was not so much high. ठीक है? So these are basically what? These are natural progressions of the viruses. In fact, if we look into the genetic history of the human beings, these growth of these viruses and these epidemics, pandemics have played very important role in determining our genetic makeup. ठीक है? So लिख लेते हैं इसको भी. In case of COVID-19, comma, it has to be remembered that even in the past, the world has suffered several epidemics and pandemics. epidemics and pandemics. Full stop. This was when the population of the world was not so much high, was not so much high. Full stop. In fact, scientific research has proven that such viral outbreaks have also been important in determining our genetic makeup. ठीक है. One theory is that COVID-19 actually rose from the wet markets of China. ठीक है. So the question arises, why though there was such wet markets where substandards, which was very substandard market, which was unhygienic, and several such type of species were being sold and eaten? Can we say it is result of inequality, unequal distribution of resources? Poor are forced to ultimately depend on such wet markets. ठीक है. So again, it is what? It is outcome of the unequal distribution of resources. So एक line और last line लिख लो. Moreover, it is believed that the COVID outbreak started from the wet meat markets of China. Wet meat markets of China. Full stop. The presence of such wet, unhygienic, substandard meat markets in itself is indicative of unequal distribution of resources. Unequal distribution of resources. ठीक है. So again, can we conclude that Malthusian, no doubt that there is some element that population growth, if it exceeds certain limits, there can be problems. But to say that it is alone creating the problem is not correct. There are other factors which are intervening the relationship between the population and resource. Okay? So we'll stop for today. We'll continue the theories tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed the lecture. And human geography, as I told you, is like this. इसमें बहुत सारी चीजें you will learn which is very close to us, which we read, which we see around us every day happening. ठीक है?